Hello, this is Dave Baumeister, and welcome to episode 20 of the Deadbeat Philosophy Podcast. If it's your first time watching or listening, welcome. And if you've tuned into one of our previous episodes, welcome back. So this week, we're going to shift things up a little bit, and instead of me interviewing a guest, I'm going to share with you some of the writing that I've done as part of this Deadbeat Philosophy project over the past few months. One other logistical update, which is that now that we've entered summer and I have a good amount of travel planned, I've decided to shift the podcast from once per week to every other week, at least for the foreseeable future. So you can expect the next episode after this one, that is episode 21, to appear 2 weeks from now. Animality and Finitude 1. Life is a journey. Death is where that journey ends. Philosophy in its history has had two basic ways of addressing the apparent truth of the idea that life is a journey and death where the journey ends. According to one way, which one sees in Socrates, there is nothing else to philosophy than the realization of this truth, and nothing else to living philosophically than living according to it. According to another way, which one sees in Plato, philosophy is precisely the realization of a truth beyond this truth, a more enduring, immortal truth that exceeds and outlasts the truth of our mortality. Can the two ways be reconciled? On my admittedly idiosyncratic view, there exists no way, at least no genuinely philosophical way, to blend them into a single, higher, master way. To be a philosopher is to live and think in the tension between the two ways of philosophizing the truth of mortality. This tension is not alone in the world. It resonates with other tensions. It resonates with the tensions between acting and thinking, nature and reason, animal and human, environment and society, joy and despair, pleasure and pain, life and death. Each an irreconcilable pair, but each nonetheless inseparably connected, like a journey and the place where that journey ends. Animality and Finitude 2, on the animality of Cookie Monster, Grover, Elmo, and Oscar the Grouch. Whereas Bert and Ernie are human, Big Bird, a canary, Snuffleupagus, an elephantine beast, and Samson, for those in Europe, a bear, many creatures of Sesame Street defy categorization. Muppets of this latter sort, which include the four loofah-textured individuals to be dissected here, are neither human nor recognizably animal. In this zone of indistinction, they stand for animality itself. They represent the breakdown of human form into animal other. Each of them is befurred with hair of an impossible color. None is clothed, a condition they share with the more categorizable Big Bird, Samson, and Snuffy, but which separates them primordially from Bert and Ernie. Each is bestowed with a certain naked personage and permission to live on Sesame Street, even without having on the street a proper address of their own. Ask yourself whether Oscar's trash can should count as his address. Let us examine each figure in turn. Cookie, who in us elicits a response of frustration, has no intelligible voice and is driven purely by inclination, not by reason. If, in his frenzied search for or consumption of cookies, he should kill a human being, a human child, let's say, children often being placed in proximity to a monster of this sort, he would not be held responsible for this. He lacks reason in this sense. He is animality as madness, as before and beside the law, though he may once have been capable of sanity. One imagines Cookie as having once had a job and a family, as having worn a tie and a bowler hat, punching his card each day down at the plant and returning to the patriarchal cave of home-cooked meals and slippers and newspaper. But then, somewhere along the way, his passion for cookies took over, developing within him a sickness of the understanding that would become all-consuming. He frustrates us since, when he is around, we cannot have anything nice, can have no cookies left out in the open. Better, therefore, to confine him than to allow him to roam free. Note that, whereas most other residents of Sesame Street are shown entering or exiting addressed or non-addressed dwelling places of some sort, in each case housing bed or nest or heap of garbage to roost upon, it is never shown where Cookie lives, where he ought to live. One imagines him as escaped from the asylum, straitjacket still bundled around his waist, though it no longer confines his cookie-addled hands over which his reason has no control. B. Grover. Grover can at times pass as a legitimate human person. He sometimes wears hats and costumes, but his incompetence at all endeavors, his inability to take anything seriously or go about his work in an earnest, straightforward way, his general roughness at life, is an animalized rawness. Hence, Grover becomes Grobi in German adaptation, meaning literally roughy. Grover is unfinished and unrefined, not because he is still working towards this, but makes errors and adjustments along the way, having not yet got it right, but moving in the right direction. Rather, he is unfinished because he is incapable of being finished. His existence can be defined, in the words of Immanuel Kant, as a certain raw state, in that the animal in this case has, so to speak, not yet developed the humanity inside itself. C. Elmo. Elmo is perhaps the most personable of the bunch. Hence, he serves as show host on his own sometimes, unthinkable for Cookie Monster. He can fill the shoes of protagonist, which must be terribly awkward for the others whenever it happens. His animalization is in the mode of the animal child. No one in their right mind would let Elmo drive a car or purchase a firearm. He has a certain innocence to him intrinsically. Elmo's childishness is no developmental stage, but rather his underlying existential structure. Elmo is child eternal, fated ever to be a person in the making, a certain sickly sweet and coy striving towards or approximation of personhood, but never a person in the proper sense. With Elmo, one can laugh, tickle, and be tickled, share a sentimental moment. But Elmo can never claim a seat at the big kids' table, at the poker game, at the round of Russian roulette, at the cocktail party, where, definitionally, only adults, only full persons are allowed. D. Oscar the Grouch. Finally, Oscar's animality is particularly twisted and bent back on itself, for it manifests not in pure inclination, as in Cookie, but in pure abjection, the abjection that belongs to all animals, that accompanies animality itself. One has the sense that, deep inside, Oscar is actually a good, loving person, a troll with the heart of a Grinch, presently 2 sizes too small, but capable of becoming 3 times larger. And yet, despite this sense, we accept his abjection as something fated, something that suits him, something he deserves. Even his character-defining grouchiness is true to his animal form. This may be taken as evidence of his resentment of the others, or of the world at large, but it just as much reveals his resignation to the gravity of it all, his realization that, though he live in a trash can and swim in refuse, this is the place that society offers him, and it is the place he ought to remain. Hence, though Oscar be grouchy, his rumblings are never registered as protests against his abjection, can never penetrate City Hall or the Sesame Street Residents' Council as complaints to be heard, and, if resources might permit, remedied. Oscar is animalized in his tragedy. His condition is that of the sad orangutan in the zoo, or of the crying, unshaven, middle-aged man whose ice cream scoop has fallen out of the cone onto the sidewalk below. One can associate with such liminal beings, can even at times befriend them, but they can never become a true part of one's family. They are each orphaned in their animality. They scuffle the pavement of Sesame Street as strange objects, not just of amusement and education, but of pity, contempt, and disgust. Animality and Finitude 3, on the question of ethical eating. The way the question of ethical eating is generally framed today is totally off target. The question tends to be framed as involving sub-questions like, should we be eating other animals or not? If we do eat other animals, should we be mistreating the animals we do eat? Should we be genetically modifying our foods? What sort of farming and land use and farm labor practices ought we to be using? But each of these questions, however urgent or valuable in their own right, misses the big picture of what's involved in how and what and why we eat. What's important is that we eat other life, and our own lives, indeed the lives of all animals, depend on the consumption or harvesting of other life forms. I'll repeat. What's important is that we eat other life, and our own lives, indeed the lives of all animals, depend on the consumption or harvesting of other life forms. No matter what form of food we consume, life forms form the lion's share of it, along, of course, with various minerals and copious volumes of liquids, like water, which most would probably say is not food, but rather drink. The consumption through eating of other life is nutritionally unavoidable for us. We cannot sustain ourselves on a diet of water and minerals, even though we also very much need both of these. For me, the fact that our eating necessarily involves the consumption of other life is eating's most interesting part. It is also among its most neglected, for we seem actively to avoid it. We hyper-focus on various downstream dimensions of the ethics of eating, such as the eating of other animals or how our eating plays into the climate catastrophe, but neglect the source of the stream itself, the fundamental anthropological and philosophical fact that we must kill in order to live. We don't think or talk about this enough. This neglect is no accident, and this makes the phenomenon even more interesting. For it also seems, at least for we humans today, that there exists in the human being a kind of default-on blind spot about all of this. We may recognize it when it is pointed out to us directly, like I hope is happening to you this very minute while you're watching or listening to this. But in our concrete day-to-day lives, the carnivorous dependence of our own form of life upon other forms of life goes wholly unrecognized and unreflected upon, as it ostensibly does for all other animals on Earth. The fundamental ethical philosophical question about human eating proceeds from and boils down to this: should this carnivorous dependence be a problem for us? Animality and Finitude 4, Against Sustainability, 6 Theses. Sustainability is a dream. It is a dream I myself dream at times, and perhaps a dream you sometimes dream as well. But dreams can only be so good. Dream goodness is no substitute for the goodness of real waking things. Sustainability as we actually have it today, not our sustainability dream, but the waking sustainability system up and running in the world today, it is broken. And not just because it has been thrown into crisis, like so many things in the era of Trump 2.0. Sustainability is broken structurally. For this reason, I'm against it, though I remain as committed as ever to environmentalism. The following 6 theses explain why. Thesis 1. Sustainability sustains a nightmare. We imagine sustainability as such, where all things are kept within limits and can continue with no loss. But the reality is, our concrete practices, sustainable or otherwise, perpetuate the very domination that our dream seeks to escape. There is no such thing as a free lunch, though sustainability tricks us into thinking that there might be. Thesis 2. Sustainability is anti-environmental while nominally valuing the environment. At least anti-sustainable capitalism is honest. Sustainable capitalism is a paradoxical, dishonest idea, not just because of greenwashing and corruption, but because sustainability is paradoxical, and capitalism might be too. Even if implemented with good intentions, it yields more human domination of nature, not less. The sustainability system we have today is the capital-friendly choice, a mostly rhetorical compromise position whereby any sustainable environmental change made is only permissible so long as certain bottom lines are not violated, especially the economic bottom line of profit and endless growth, but also the societal bottom line of not trading the lives or well-being of human beings, at least those human beings whose lives are deemed worth living, for the lives or well-being of any other entity in nature. Thesis 3. Why is sustainability actually anti-environmental? It perpetuates the human mastery of nature. Sustainability. It is not that it can never yield green outcomes. It is that the very structure it establishes perpetuates the root problem, the human domination of nature, which is kept going by the human's denial of its own existence as a natural animal being, and its refusal to subject human values to the values of non-human nature. Non-human nature, under sustainability, is subjected to the human. Non-human nature can, under sustainability, only have a relative diminished value. Thesis 4. We are the meteor that killed the dinosaurs, transmogrified into the 21st century, and we increasingly know this. Our children grasp it clearly. Sustainability addresses the guilt we feel once we know and grasp this. It does not address the fact that we are the meteor, our meteoricity. Where does the fundamental appeal of the sustainability dream come from? The appeal that vaguely but broadly justifies the existence of the sustainability system as we have it today. Guilt and delusion. We all want a happy ending. Thesis 5. Under which conditions could sustainability actually work? Under fantasy conditions. We all want to have and eat our cake at the same time, but this cannot be done. The drive to continue wanting this, even though we know we can't have it, is paradoxical. Sustainability harbors paradox, fantasy, delusion, and the perpetuation of the very problem that it nominally seeks to solve. Thesis 6. We should be environmentalists, not practitioners of sustainability. Environmentalists are better off ditching sustainability. Its rejection allows us to clarify our values in light of where we actually stand as a planetary community. That is, within a massive hole which sustainability only digs us deeper into. And so, to sum up, sustainability is a nightmare masquerading as a good dream. It perpetuates the human mastery of non-human nature while proposing the opposite. What it offers us is the promise of feeling less guilty about doing the bad things that we on some level know we will keep on doing. Environmentalists should turn elsewhere. Animality and Finitude 5, The Paradox of the Easter Bunny. Get ready to comb your hair. Of all the folkloric non-human animal creatures of my childhood, just one had the special mix of features needed to achieve an unfailingly repetitious haunting of my mid-April, year after year after year after year. This is the Easter Bunny, a creature whose power over humanity is arguably unrivaled by any other non-human animal on Earth today. I think we would all agree the Easter Bunny is a most powerful animal, but how often do we stop to think? What is it about the Easter Bunny that is so powerful? How does it achieve the grip over all of us that it has? What makes it the enduring vehicle of raw, pulsating power, personal and political, that it is? For those who haven't stopped to think about any of this yet, here are some quick deadbeat reflections on the singular power of the Easter Bunny. The Easter Bunny is powerful because it sticks with us like mental, spiritual, psychic glue, and we can't rinse it out no matter how hard we try. The Easter Bunny is powerful in the way a lingering illness, virus, or parasite is powerful. The Easter Bunny is a tulip-centered power center we cannot stop ourselves from placing our nose up near to. But the Easter Bunny is no run-of-the-mill psychic meme. Its stickiness is not just cultural or psychological, but philosophical. That is, part of the Easter Bunny's power lies in the fact that it cannot fully and consistently be thought. The Easter Bunny contains paradox. The Easter Bunny is self-contradictory. The Easter Bunny's basic concept fails to compute and results in a runtime error. And this is, I think, because the Easter Bunny harbors in itself two contradictory ideas, the coexistence of which results in paradox. And this paradox can be formulated in the phrase, the Easter Bunny is both less and more than human. On the one hand, the Easter Bunny is less than human. The Easter Bunny is a non-human animal. Folklorist Christina Hull had it right when in 1961 she called Easter Bunny the true Easter beast. I've previously reflected on the animality of 4 Sesame Street puppets, Cookie Monster, Grover, Elmo, and Oscar the Grouch. The animality of the Easter Bunny is different from each of these 4 in that the Easter Bunny is a literal non-human animal, if a magical, logic-defying, egg-laying one. The Easter Bunny is covered with fur, cannot speak, usually wears no clothing, at least no pants, scurries away and dwells, with rare exceptions, hidden from sight in bushes, forests, and woods. It can, in principle, like any hare, be hunted, even eaten, including at Easter time. And perhaps most animalistic of all, it lays eggs. And what is more animal in the human imaginary than the laying of an egg? Something unifying birds, fish, xenomorphs, and reptiles alike. And somehow, at the same time, the Easter Bunny is more than human. The Easter Bunny is a god. There is, of course, the linkage of the Easter Bunny with Jesus Christ and Jesus' death and his transubstantiated resurrection. My son, by the way, did a fantastic job of explaining this earlier as the life cycle of the hen, who must perish into the egg, which is like the hen taking on new life. The Easter Bunny as a folkloric figure is supposed to have originated among German Lutherans and reflects Christian ideals of virginal purity, including birth without apparent conception. One asks, must the Easter Bunny first get busy before it can produce its Easter eggs? Many early naturalists wrongly supposed that hares were hermaphroditic self-reproducers, like earthworms in fact are. At the same time, the Easter Bunny also clearly channels certain pre-Christian European divinity conceptions surrounding springtime, fertility, and the mysterious nexus between nature and human beings. Looking back at my first encounters with the Easter Bunny as a child in Southern California in the 1980s, I can still taste something of the substance of this paradox as I lived it then, even though at the time I would have certainly used other words to describe it. Was my young encounter with the paradox of the Easter Bunny traumatic? Not exactly, even if it was not uniformly positive, for there are many forms of encounter with paradox that, while not being traumatic per se, nonetheless sit uncomfortably in the way they linger and carry over from childhood into adulthood. Paradoxes can occupy a strange nether position in the child mind and can continue to occupy this place in the adult mind. Now, on grounds of this paradoxical duality, Freud might have identified the Easter Bunny with the uncanny. But let's set psychoanalysis aside for now and consider instead what Aristotle said about extrasocial beings in Book 1 of the Politics from about 330 BCE. He who is unable to live in society, or who has no need because he is sufficient for himself, must be either a beast or a god. The Easter Bunny tries to be, and perhaps succeeds at being, both a beast and a god. The Easter Bunny is inhuman in both senses, both at the same time. The Easter Bunny belongs neither with humans, nor with other animals, nor with other gods. The Easter Bunny belongs in a paradoxical space all of its own. This, I say, is the source of the Easter Bunny's power. Animality and Finitude 6. A spoonful of sugar helps the paradoxical medicine go down. Mary Poppins nicely summarizes the way we humans of the early 21st century have become accustomed to reconciling ourselves with the paradox of modern identity, itself rooted directly in our attempted but failed self-displacement from nature, or the institution of the human nature conceptual and lived existential divides. Allow me to lay out this logic in a philosophically direct but legibly onerous way. We accept short-term satiation, the sugar, for the sake of our longer-term health, the medicine, even though it seems implied we are not sufficiently motivated on its own merits. Hence the need to seek help in the first place, which is actually better addressed by more deeply and systematically zeroing in on the underlying root cause of it all, historically and conceptually, which in this case might plausibly be something like the human's fundamental self-destructive self-alienation from nature. The problematics of formulating this deeper root cause are best addressed separately on another occasion. Had enough parentheticals yet? Listen on for more. Mary Poppins suggests and attempts only to treat the symptom of all this, with her spoonful of sugar masking the bitterness of the medicine, her always upbeat, mystifyingly musical demeanor, and her cartoonishly exaggerated, chaste Victorian, as imagined in the 1960s, projection of moral purity. Hers is a medicine that makes you more sick, but thereby the more able to carry the symptoms of your sickness. This is the secret to its success. It is a matter of allowing the paradox to remain present, defining an intention, while alleviating the psychological and physical pain, not to mention the existential malaise that comes along with living in a world structured by it. It is aspirin for a broken leg. But if your leg was broken, and there was no full-blown, reliable, systematic, testable, free from peril way of treating the broken leg itself in sight, as seems to be the case for any genuine possibility of meaningful system change among humans today. If this were your situation, would you not accept the aspirin? Think about it. You goddamn well probably would. This is the situation many, even most humans are in today. We live in orbit of a paradox rooted deep in human prehistory and propelling us onward into the future. This is human nature, and it is fatal for humans as animal beings. It is like smoking, undeniably net negative for the human body. But why does it survive, given this self-harming permatendency? Wouldn't the self-defeatingness of the whole enterprise mean that it will eventually come to a necessary end, like Marx and eco-Marxists after him have all in a way pictured it would? Will the paradox be aufgehoben or sublimated into a higher, more historically developed, evolved, and future phase or state of human or world or cosmic history? Perhaps. Perhaps not. Incidentally, acceptance of the possibility of that not defines, for me at least, what it means to occupy what might be called a post-Marxist eco-critical perspective on human beings and society. I think all we can really say for now is that the self-harming, species and interspecies suicidal pattern will continue. The paradox will continue. You reading this, you hearing this, you watching this, the paradox is likely to outlast you. It will define not just your life, but that of all future generations for the foreseeable future, which raises the question, of course, how far does the foreseeable future extend? What scales of imagination and foreseeability matter here? The paradox will continue, despite, or indeed rather because, the lion's share of human power continues to prefer it. Like water prefers to flow downward rather than upward. Just like with smoking tobacco, or perhaps drinking coffee, there have at various times in history been many perceived benefits for a sufficiently powerful set of humans so as to skew society and politics precisely in favor of continuing this fatality. The propellant forward future bent force of the paradox underlies so much in our world today. Concretely challenging this is incredibly difficult. The paradox has incalculable weight and inertia. Conceptually, though, revealing the paradox as paradox and then thinking with it as paradox, this is easier, or at least more easily conveyed. For even here at the philosophical core of the issue, the paradox remains difficult to clearly or accurately communicate about, given what might be called its structurally self-effacing nature. And so, to drop back down, open umbrella clutched in raised hand, out of the clouds to the smoggy, colonialist, all-around old-fashioned world of Mary Poppins's London. Our legs will likely remain broken for a while still. Our prognosis is not good, and undoubtedly extends beyond our own lives as individuals. And so, why not take some of Mary Poppins' medicine? It's sweet. So that was 6 chapters of the Work in Progress, Animality and Finitude, available on the Deadbeat Philosophy homepage. We'll be back in 2 weeks with a read-through of material from one of the other books in progress, titled On the Kanthropocene. If you've enjoyed the Deadbeat Philosophy podcast thus far, be sure to leave us a review or let us know in the comments on YouTube what you've thought. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you again soon. Bye. The Deadbeat Philosophy Podcast is a co-production of Deadbeat Media and the Museum Hegel-Haus, Stuttgart. For more Deadbeat content and to chip in to keep the channel going, check us out at deadbeatphilosophy.substack.com. For more about the Museum Hegel-Haus, check out hegelhaus.de. That's HEGEL-HAUS.de. Adios and auf Wiedersehen.